Chapter 428. Unable to catch up with Yang Kai, unable to find any trace of Yang Kai, and even more fearful of the mysterious peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master, Yang Kong and Yang Ying both wore depressed expressions. After a moment of silence, Kong Zhan of the Kong family suddenly smiled and said, "The two of you, do you want to go to your ninth brother's house now?" Yang Kong and Yang Ying both glanced at him suspiciously, but soon their eyes lit up. And Yang Kai had run out on his own, so there was no one guarding his house. Moreover, that mysterious master had also been brought out by him, so the defenses there must be empty. Moreover, Yang Zhao and Yang Shen were also there. If they went there now, the four of them together would be enough to flatten Yang Kai's house. Looking at each other indifferently, the two brothers both saw the opportunity in this situation. But before they could consider the pros and cons, Gao Rangfeng of the Gao family shook his head and said, "That's not right. I think the two of you should hurry back to your own houses. If there really is a peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master as Yang Kai's ally, I'm afraid your houses will be in danger right now." Hearing this, Yang Kong and Yang Ying's expressions changed greatly. They had only seen the opportunity to defeat others, but had completely ignored their own situation. This time, in order to eat the first piece of meat, the two of them had brought a lot of allies with them. In addition to leaving behind a blood warrior to guard their flags, they didn't have many powerful forces to guard their respective houses. At this time, if Yang Kai really took advantage of this situation, they would be defeated unjustly. Thinking so, the two of them no longer had any ideas about Yang Kai and quickly led their respective forces back. 10 kilometers outside War City, Yang Kai put down Yang Tai in his hand. Not bothering to seal his meridians and Yuan Qi, Yang Kai lifted his hat and called out, "Third brother." "Ninth brother's methods are quite good," Yang Tai said with a look of admiration. Yang Kai shook his head and said, "I just took advantage of their loophole." Tonight, no one would have thought that he would dare to come out and cause trouble, so when Yang Kong and Yang Ying were fighting each other, they were completely unprepared. If not for this, how could Yang Kai so easily capture the flag? As long as they were slightly on guard, Yang Kai would not have succeeded this time. No matter what. Now that third brother has fallen into your hands, it's all thanks to you. Yang Tai looked at Yang Kai indifferently and said, "Rather than being captured by those two, why don't you just stay here? Third brother would rather let you take advantage of me. At least you didn't take the initiative to attack me. Third brother, you're being too serious." Yang Kai sensed his indifference and naturally knew that he was a little depressed because he was the first to be eliminated. "You can go back to the central capital. There's nothing for you to do here." Yang Tai was stunned and frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's nothing special, just taking the flag is enough." Saying so, without waiting for Yang Tai to say anything else, Yang Kai's figure flickered and returned to War City. Standing in place for a long time, Yang Tai's expression gradually eased. Frowning, Yang Tai stared in the direction Yang Kai disappeared, a faint trace of gratitude appearing on his face. Yang Kai not taking him to the family to exchange for supplies was tantamount to giving him some face. Yang Tai hadn't achieved much in these past few years, nor had he done anything earth-shattering. His performance had always been mediocre, but as a young family young lord, his pride was still ingrained in his bones. If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have chosen to die tonight and would have taken the initiative to surrender. If he was really captured by Yang Kai and taken to the family to exchange for supplies. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to raise his head in the Yang family in the future. Taking a deep breath, Yang Tai looked up at the gem-like clusters of stars in the sky, smiled bitterly, and turned in the direction of the central capital. The battle here really had nothing to do with him. The Yang family young lords who had been defeated in the inheritance war were no longer allowed to participate, but those from other forces still had a chance to choose. Yang Kai shot out like a meteor, using his powerful divine sense to isolate his aura from leaking out as he hurried back to his mansion. Letting Yang Tai go wasn't because of their brotherly love. Yang Kai's relationship with his cousins was very thin, but tonight, Yang Tai's refusal to surrender had touched him a little. She shouldn't do anything to humiliate such a person. Northwest corner of War City, Yang Kai's mansion. Half an hour ago. Almost at the same time as the chaos in Yang Tai's mansion, Yang Kai's mansion was also very lively. The information Yang Kong had received was not wrong. Tonight, among the 8 young lords, besides the eldest brother Yang Wei, who didn't take any action due to his status, only the 8th brother Yang Quan had remained inactive. The second brother, Yang Zhao, and his ally, the Yi family's Yi X and Rou, led a number of masters to Yang Kai's mansion. Before these people had even begun to move, the 6th brother, Yang Shen, and Qiu Zirua also arrived. The 2 sides stood firm and exchanged pleasantries, all of them exchanging pleasantries. Tonight, they had only come to attack Yang Kai. There was no need for them to become enemies. This was something everyone was very clear about. In front of the mansion's main hall, Hua Xingchen sat in an armchair, fanning himself with a folding fan in his hand as 2 beautiful maids poured wine for him, a look of contentment on his face. The arrival of Yang Zhao and Yang Shen didn't seem to disturb his mood. Next to Yang Zhao, Yi X and Rou stood gracefully, a gorgeous smile on her face, her curvaceous figure blooming with a different kind of seductiveness, her skin white as jade, and her grace outstanding. The Yi family's first young lady, although not as famous as Qiu Yimeng, was still a prestigious figure among the younger generation. Behind Yang Zhao, the Xiang family's Xiang Chu and the Nan family's Nan Sheng stared down gloomily, their faces filled with pleasure. In particular, Nan Sheng, when he stroked his 2 severed fingers, a vicious light flashed across his face. Those 2 fingers were the result of Yang Kai forcing him to cripple himself. This kind of hatred was absolutely irreconcilable, and for the past few months, Nan Sheng had been constantly thinking about how to exact revenge. Yang Zhao's allies were strong and had a large number of people, but Yang Shen's side was not weak either. With the help of the Qiu family's Qiu Zirua and the support he had gathered, he was able to resist Yang Zhao for a short time. On the other hand, in Yang Kai's mansion, besides the central capital Wolf, only Qiu Yimeng and Xiang Tianshao were standing next to him. In addition, Chu Gao Yi stood like an iron tower in front of the main hall, motionless. Ying Jiu's whereabouts were unknown. However, everyone present knew that this shadowy blood warrior was lurking in the darkness, ready to launch a thunderous strike at any moment. Separated by some distance, Qiu Yimeng and Qiu Zirua's eyes met. The former smiled slightly, her smile full of confidence, while the latter's eyes couldn't help flashing slightly before quickly returning to his former self, seemingly not wanting to show any timidity in front of his elder sister. At the same time, Xiang Chu and Xiang Tianshao also stared at each other, one expressionless, the atmosphere suddenly becoming a little tense. 6th brother, what do you want to do with little brother Kai? Yang Zhao suddenly asked with a smile. Yang Shen also smiled. If 2nd brother wants to eat the meat, little brother will drink the soup. 2nd brother can't eat all of it alone, right? Naturally. Yang Zhao slowly shook his head, hesitating for a moment before saying, since that's the case, 2nd brother will take little brother Kai's flag, we'll split it evenly. As long as 2nd brother is in charge. Yang Shen grinned meaningfully, quite satisfied with Yang Zhao's proposal. Intentionally or unintentionally, he glanced towards Xiang Chu and Nan Sheng and couldn't help curling his lips, a trace of disdain flashing across his eyes. The grievances between Yang Kai and them had already spread today. It wasn't difficult to explain why Yang Zhao chose little brother Kai instead of the flag. The Xiang and Nan families joining Yang Zhao's camp had greatly increased his strength, so he naturally wanted to express his gratitude to his allies. Capturing Yang Kai was tantamount to losing face, so Xiang Chu and Nanxing should be satisfied and would only serve him more loyally in the future. Hey, you two, aren't you tired of standing there talking? Why don't you come down? Hua Xingchen suddenly called out casually. Yang Zhao smiled and shook his head. No need, brother Hua, let my little brother Kai come out and speak, I don't want to embarrass him too much. Yang Kai? Hua Stars grinned meaningfully. He doesn't seem to be at home. Not at home? Yang Zhao frowned, apparently thinking that Hua Stars was trying to fool him, asking curiously, if he's not at home at this time, where would he be? How would I know? Maybe he's somewhere enjoying himself, heh. Hua Stars grinned as he stood up and opened his folding fan, pretending to be a romantic. In any case, he's not at home. If you don't believe me, you can ask Qiu Yimeng, she should know where Yang Kai is. Yang Zhao couldn't help turning his eyes to Qiu Yimeng, who smiled lightly and tucked her hair behind her ear, asking softly, "If I say he's not at home, would second young lord believe me?" Hearing her speak so ambiguously, Yang Zhao couldn't help but frown, subconsciously thinking that Yang Kai was playing some kind of trick. But soon, Yang Zhao's expression became firm and he said loudly, "I don't believe you. Tonight was such a sensitive time, how could Yang Kai not be at home? He must be hiding somewhere, not daring to show himself. Then second young lord can search this place and see if you can find him." Qiu Yimeng smiled lightly, but in her heart she was cursing him. Yang Kai had indeed said hello to her before going out, but before she could agree, he had disappeared. Where he had gone or what he was going to do, she had no idea. "No need." Yang Zhao's face showed a look of impatience as he shouted loudly, "Little brother Kai, come out yourself, second brother promises not to embarrass you." After calling out twice in a row, Yang Kai didn't respond. Nansheng couldn't help sneering, "Second young lord, it seems that your little brother doesn't want to give you any face. Since that's the case, there's no need to talk nonsense with him, just directly attack, he won't be able to resist." He seemed to be impatient to defeat Yang Kai so he could watch him make a fool of himself and soothe the wounds he had suffered these past few months. "Matters between us brothers don't need others to meddle." Yang Zhao snorted. Nansheng's brow furrowed as he grit his teeth, not daring to say anything more. Xiang Chu saw that Nansheng had suffered a setback, but instead of restraining himself, he smiled and said, "Second young lord, I also think it's best to directly attack. The defensive forces here aren't too strong. If you and the sixth young lord join forces, what's there to fear? This is what it means to be courteous before resorting to force. If others don't appreciate it, Chapter 429. Xiang Chu could see at a glance that Yang Zhao's words were false. Although he was reprimanding Nansheng, he obviously agreed with Nansheng's point of view, but he had no choice but to say a few words. At this time, someone needed to add oil to the fire so that outsiders would think it was someone else who was helping him make up his mind. This way, in the future, others wouldn't say he didn't care about his brother's feelings. That was why Xiang Chu dared to continue instigating Yang Zhao. He was a hypocrite with a sword in his heart. Xiang Chu was such a person, so he naturally understood Yang Zhao's thoughts. Sure enough, Yang Zhao hesitated for a moment before slowly nodding. "Good, what brother Xiang said is right. Second brother has already shown ninth brother enough benevolence. Since ninth brother doesn't want to give second brother face, I have nothing else to say." Turning his head and looking at Yang Shen, Yang Zhao smiled and said, "If ninth brother doesn't want to show up, sixth brother, you can go get the flag yourself." Yang Shen had been waiting for a good show with a smile on his face, but when he heard Yang Zhao's words, he couldn't help feeling a bit startled. Immediately realizing that he had fallen into his second brother's trap without a trace, Yang Zhao's intestines turned green with regret. Just now, Yang Zhao had discussed with him, one wanted a person, the other wanted the flag. Now that Yang Kai wasn't showing up, the only thing left was the flag. Naturally, it was up to Yang Shen to snatch it. Perceiving Yang Zhao's intentions, the smile on Yang Shen's face slowly converged and became dignified. Yang Zhao continued to smile and said, "Go get it yourself, second brother promises he won't have any ideas about you." Saying such words in front of so many people was enough to show Yang Zhao's sincerity. Yang Shen frowned and thought for a while, then nodded and said, "Thank you, second brother." Sweeping his eyes over the crowd he had brought, Yang Zhao pointed to an Immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage cultivator and said, "Go to the central hall and take out the flag." This person was a helper from Yang Shen's mother's family and was also from a first-class force, so his strength wasn't too weak. However, his strength wasn't too high either. Seeing Yang Shen point at him, this cultivator couldn't help wearing a bitter expression as he glanced over at Chu Gao Yi, who was standing in front of the central hall. The Blood Warrior's name. Deterrence. What are you afraid of? Yang Shen snorted. The two Blood Warriors around ninth brother have yet to fully recover from their injuries. They can't even display 30% of their usual strength. What's more, they are restrained by the Yang family's rules and cannot take the initiative to attack. As long as you don't provoke them, they naturally won't attack you. They don't care even if I take out the flag? The Immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage Master's eyes lit up. If this was really the case, then he had nothing to worry about. Of course not. Yang Zhao shook his head. They're only responsible for passive counterattacks. If you try to grab the flag, they'll naturally stop you. But as long as you're fast enough and run out with the flag, I think they won't be able to stop you in their current state. What are you waiting for? Yang Shen shouted impatiently. The Immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage Master helplessly stepped out of the crowd. While watching Chu Gaoyi vigilantly, Yang Kai pushed his divine sense to the limit, trying to find where Ying Jiao was hiding. But no matter how hard he tried, it was difficult for him to detect where Ying Jiao was hiding. This blood warrior didn't seem to be here at all. Huosheng was still waving his folding fan leisurely. Qiu Yimeng's pretty face also wore a calm smile as her pair of beautiful eyes stared at the newcomer, clearly taking pleasure in his misfortune. Being stared at by her like this, the newcomer couldn't help feeling even more nervous. Slowly walking forward, this person condensed his strength and secretly became vigilant, bypassing Huosheng and Qiu Yimeng before staring at Chu Gaoyi, who was standing in front of the main hall. Chu Gaoyi suddenly snorted, scaring the newcomer so much that he almost used the move he had been hiding. If he had used this move, Chu Gaoyi would have been able to counterattack. Ha! Huosheng saw this scene and couldn't help laughing. Qiu Yimeng also pursed her lips, trying not to laugh. Seeing one of his subordinates disgrace himself like this made Yang Shen's face very ugly. The newcomer's face alternated between blue and red, seemingly feeling a little ashamed, and in a fit of anger he walked briskly into the main hall. It was as if he had entered a place where no one could stop him. From inside, there was a rustling sound, and soon, the newcomer rushed out holding a flag in his hand. Sixth young lord Before he could finish his sentence, a figure seemed to flash in the darkness and everything quickly calmed down. The newcomer held a flag in his hand and stood at the entrance of the main hall, half of his body already out of the main hall, but he would never be able to take another step. Yang Zhao and Yang Shen's expressions suddenly changed, the cultivator behind them also paled. He's dead. A blood warrior next to Yang Zhao shouted, his eyes darting around. It's Ying Jiao's shadow dance. So fast. Yang Zhao's voice filled with horror as he asked in a low voice, "Did you see where Ying Jiao was hiding?" "I didn't see clearly." The blood warrior slowly shook his head. Ying Jiao's assassination and concealment skills are second to none in the blood warrior hall. Even the hall master and vice hall master would find it difficult to find him. I couldn't find him. After a pause, he shook his head again. But what puzzles me is, shouldn't Ying Jiao be seriously injured? How could he still display such a powerful attack? His injuries shouldn't have healed, right? Yang Shen asked in shock. One of his subordinates suddenly dying had put him in a bad mood. Impossible. The blood warrior next to Yang Shen also interjected, shaking his head. Chu Gaoyi and Ying Jiao's injuries are very serious. When we saw them this morning, their vitality was still weak. It's impossible for them to have recovered in just a single day. Then it must be his mad tyrant blood skill. Yang Zhao confidently inferred. The two blood warriors who had spoken before also nodded silently, a trace of sadness appearing on their faces. Ying Jiao using his mad tyrant blood skill now was likely the last time he would use it. After tonight, there would be no more Ying Jiao in this world. The blood warriors all had feelings for each other. Although they didn't talk about it openly, they were closer than blood brothers, willing to sacrifice their own life to save the others. In his current state, how long can his mad tyrant blood skill last? Yang Zhao asked. Even though he was reluctant to answer, the blood warrior next to him whispered, "About half an hour, his vitality will be completely overdrawn." "Then we wait." "We'll wait half an hour." Yang Zhao made up his mind. The mansion fell into a brief period of peace, only Huosheng once again sitting back in his armchair, humming an unknown tune while drinking and making merry, his leisurely appearance drawing everyone's attention. Yang Zhao was furious. Time passed slowly, and the feeling of waiting was torturous. After half an hour, Yang Zhao nodded, "It's about time." Yang Shen's spirits rose. A trace of decisiveness appeared on his face as he said, "Brother Qiu, This time let your 2 Chiu family elders go up as well. I don't believe we can't win back the flag. Chiu Zirua heard this and smiled, as 6th young lord commands. Saying so, he signaled to the 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Chiu family elders and they both stepped forward. Before they could move though, Chiu Yimeng suddenly said, "Brother, if I were you, I wouldn't play around with their lives. Your decision is too reckless." Chiu Zirua frowned and sneered, "Elder sister, don't try to be mysterious. Yang Kai is destined to be eliminated tonight. You've always been good at reading people. But this time, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. With so many of us here, how can you resist?" "Stubborn fool." Chiu Yimeng shook her head in disappointment and no longer said anything. Yang Shen waited for the siblings to finish speaking before waving his hand. "All of you go up, split up half of you to entangle that Chu Gao Yi, the other half get me the flag." With a series of shuffling sounds, more than a dozen figures flew out. Half of them were Immortal Ascension Boundary cultivators, the strongest of which was an Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage cultivator while the rest were not weak. Among the dozen or so people, the Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage cultivator led 4 or 5 others to surround Chu Gao Yi, who had been standing motionless. None of them made a move and simply surrounded him. Even though they knew that he was seriously injured, these first-class cultivators didn't dare to take the initiative to attack the blood warriors. Chu Gao Yi was like an ancient mountain, standing motionless, only glancing over at them indifferently. The rest of the people rushed to the main hall and rushed towards the man who had just died, wanting to take back the flag in his hand. These masters all had excited looks on their faces, as if victory was already in sight. Ingio should have no power to attack at this moment, which meant that this flag would belong to whoever obtained it. Taking back the flag would be a great merit to Yang Shen, so what was there to worry about not receiving a reward? 7 or 8 hands reached out to grab the flag. At that moment, a faint light burst out from the darkness and a thin figure suddenly appeared. This person held 2 daggers in his hands that glowed with a dark light. While everyone was excited, a cold light flashed from these daggers. This thin figure blurred and suddenly split into more than a dozen copies, each of them cold and gloomy, each of them decisive in their killing intent. Shadow dance kill. Screams and screams rang out as blood splashed out. How could the masters who had tried to snatch the flag resist the assassination of an Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage blood warrior? In a flash, 3 of them were knocked to the ground. The others quickly retreated, but still couldn't avoid the fate of being injured. In an instant, the dust settled. Ingio stood alone, holding his daggers, like a ghost in the dark, standing at the entrance of the main hall, reaching out and retrieving the flag from the dead man's hand, tossing it back into the main hall. His figure quickly blurred and disappeared into the air without a trace. He didn't use his Mad Tyrant blood skill. Yang Zhao's eyes narrowed as he exclaimed. The characteristics of a blood warrior after using his Mad Tyrant blood skill were very obvious. Their vitality would glow red, but Ingio didn't show any such signs. Second brother. Yang Shen's eyes went bloodshot. Just now, he had mistakenly believed in Yang Zhao's judgment, causing his subordinates to suffer heavy casualties. Yang Zhao glanced at him coldly and frowned. Second brother made a mistake in his judgment. Then my losses? Ha! Yang Shen also knew that it was unrealistic to ask Yang Zhao to compensate him for his losses, hating himself for not being more cautious and trusting others so easily. Chapter 430. In front of the central hall, Ingio had appeared like a ghost, killing 3 people before quickly disappearing. Yang Shen's subordinates no longer dared to act rashly, all of them turning back one by one, their faces filled with relief as they cast inquiring looks towards Yang Shen. Yang Shen's face was gloomy to the extreme, his stomach full of annoyance, no longer daring to issue orders casually. Yang Zhao, on the other hand, was frowning as he silently cursed. Ingio hadn't used his Mad Tyrant blood skill, but he was still so fierce. With his current injuries, this shouldn't be the case. Before coming here, Yang Kai had clearly heard that although Ingio was an elite of the Blood Warrior Hall, any Immortal Ascension Boundary 6th Stage Master would be able to easily defeat him. Had he really fully recovered from his injuries? Or had he used some kind of special method to suppress his injuries? Yang Zhao was confused, secretly speculating, but still couldn't help feeling curious. Looking at Chu Gaoyi again, from beginning to end, he hadn't said a word, his body hadn't moved at all, except for the occasional movement of his eyes. This blood warrior was no different from a corpse. However, even after being surrounded by 4 or 5 people, his expression hadn't changed at all, remaining as indifferent as water. Yang Zhao suddenly felt a headache coming on. Although the strength of the people he and Yang Shen had brought wasn't weak, if they wanted to snatch the flag from under the noses of 2 blood warriors, they would have to take a great risk. The biggest question now was how strong these 2 blood warriors in Yang Kai's house were. If they were just playing tricks, Yang Zhao was confident he could eliminate Yang Kai tonight, but if they weren't, after hesitating for a long time, Yang Zhao coldly snorted and said, "Sixth brother, it seems you can't handle this flag." Yang Shen's face went cold, unable to refute. "Since that's the case, second brother will help you." Yang Zhao stared down and said. Tonight's opportunity was rare, Yang Zhao didn't want to miss it. Even though he knew his decision was somewhat inappropriate, he couldn't help feeling restless. "You can help me, but as for the ownership of the flag..." Yang Shen had suffered a loss this time but had learned his lesson and knew to ask clearly. "We'll talk about it when the time comes." How could Yang Zhao accept a loss? Right now, he didn't know where Yang Kai was, so if he hastily agreed to hand over the flag, he might not be able to obtain anything. Yang Shen frowned, not bothering with Yang Zhao's decision to go back on his word, pondering for a long time before nodding. "All right." Now that 4 of them had died at once, Yang Shen couldn't wait to win a victory to salvage the situation. "Good, let's go." Yang Zhao chuckled and waved his hand. Behind him, the 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Masters brought by the Yi families Yi X and Rou, as well as the 2 elders from the Xiang and Nen families all set out. Yang Shen also signaled to the people he had brought with him. In an instant, the 2 brothers joined forces. More than a dozen mental travel realm experts approached the middle hall. At the same time, there was a group of Yuan Qi cultivators. Hey, let me make things clear first. You guys can go back, but don't drag me in. I'm just here to watch the fun." Hua Stars shouted and took a few steps back. Qiu Yimeng sneered and kicked him in the ass, sending him flying forward while Shi and Xiang Tianshao took a step forward. The people from the Autumn Rain Hall and Xiang Tianshao suddenly appeared in the surroundings like ghosts. There were quite a few of them, but not many of them were presentable. The high realm experts brought by Yang Zhao and Yang Shen didn't show any fear and quickly approached the middle hall. Chu Gaoyi, who had remained motionless until now, suddenly roared as a violent Yuan Qi burst forth from his body. An invisible shockwave spread out in all directions as his voice rang like thunder in everyone's ears. "If you want to enter the middle hall, you'll have to pass through me first." Full of qi, there was no trace of injury on his face. Yang Zhao and Yang Shen's subordinates had already been alerted by Ingjiu, who was hiding nearby, so when they heard Chu Gaoyi's roar, it was hard to say which one of them had the worst mental fortitude and actually sent out a ray of light towards Chu Gaoyi. Chu Gaoyi blocked it and grinned. Because of the Blood Warriors' family rules, they were only responsible for passive counterattacks. Before others attacked them, they couldn't take any action, but now that they had been attacked, Chu Gaoyi could naturally act without any scruples. His figure suddenly transformed into a streak of blue light and in the next moment appeared in the middle of a large group of enemies. In the Blood Warrior Hall, Chu Gaoyi was known as the one who dared to risk his life the most. He was most proficient in short bursts of power. In the time it would take to burn a stick of incense, he could release all of his Yuan Qi and spiritual energy into his body without leaving a single trace behind. During this time, basically no one could withstand his attack. A burst of spiritual energy visible to the naked eye burst out from Chu Gaoyi's mind as a tyrannical soul skill suddenly exploded all around him. Forming a series of hand seals, Chu Gaoyi unleashed a series of exquisite and lethal martial skills. In an instant, everyone was thrown off their feet and thrown into chaos. No one had expected that this blood warrior, who should have been seriously injured, would dare to rush into the crowd and launch an all-out attack without any intention of defending himself. In just 3 breaths of time, someone had fallen to the ground and died while another was sent flying, exploding into a cloud of dust midair. Yang Zhao, Yang Xin, Xiang Chu, Nenxing, and Qiu Zirua's eyes suddenly trembled. None of them seemed to have expected that the outbreak of battle this time would be so ferocious. On the other hand, the 2 blood warriors who had followed the 2 Yang family brothers glanced at each other and smiled knowingly. With their eyesight, they naturally saw that Chu Gao-yi had fully recovered from his injuries, otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to display such powerful combat strength. How had he recovered? When they saw him during the day, he was obviously the same as before, so how could he have undergone such a huge change in a single day? The 2 blood warriors couldn't understand this. Chu Gao-yi's ferocity and valiance had truly frightened his enemies. After 2 people died, the rest of the blood warriors couldn't help feeling a little nervous, none of them daring to get too close to him. What are you afraid of? With so many people, can't we take down a single blood warrior? Yang Zhao saw that the situation had taken a turn for the worse and roared angrily. At this point, there was no turning back. Either he didn't do anything, or he had no choice. He had already seen that Yang Kai was concealing his strength and biding his time. If he didn't defeat Yang Kai tonight, his youngest brother would definitely become a big enemy in the future, even more terrifying than his eldest brother Yang Wei. He had to get rid of him tonight. Yang Zhao grit his teeth. His shout really had a good effect. Those who had attacked Chu Gao-yi had only been deterred by the blood warrior's name, but after stabilizing their footing, they quickly discovered that the blood warriors weren't invincible. Chu Gao-yi's method of only attacking and not defending had allowed him to force his enemies into a panic, even taking advantage of the opportunity to kill 2 of his blood warriors, but he had also added a lot of scars to his body. What's more, there were too many of them, so they could easily avoid Chu Gao-yi's killing moves. If they cooperated, it was more than enough to kill this powerful blood warrior. Unless he used his Mad Tyrant blood skill, but with no one to support him, he wouldn't have the time to do so. For a time, everyone's morale soared and their courage soared, all of them pushing their martial skills and artifacts to the limit. In the next moment, more than a dozen streaks of light shot out from all directions towards Chu Gao-yi, who was surrounded in the middle. With so many energy beams raining down on him, even if Chu Gao-yi was a blood warrior, he couldn't resist them all, and in an instant, many wounds appeared on his body. However, Chu Gao-yi didn't make a sound and continued to use his Yuan Qi and Soul skills. With this kind of method, the final result would undoubtedly be Chu Gao-yi's death, but Yang Xin and Yang Zhao's subordinates would also lose more than half of their lives. Qiu Yimeng's beautiful eyes flashed as she stared at the entrance of the central hall, then back at Yang Zhao and Yang Shun, her thoughts turning sharply. Ying Jiao couldn't come out now, but once he did, either Yang Zhao or Yang Shun would be able to easily take away the flag with the blood warriors. Hiding in the dark was the only way he could become a hindrance to Yang Zhao and Yang Shun, as well as a weapon to deter the enemy. Ying Jiao obviously understood this very well, so even if Chu Gao-yi was surrounded, he remained indifferent. However, if Ying Jiao didn't come out, Chu Gao-yi alone wouldn't be enough to defeat the enemy. This was something Qiu Yimeng also understood. In this situation, guarding the flag wasn't a problem. The biggest key was that the blood warriors couldn't die, otherwise Yang Kai's power would be greatly reduced. Go help! After a moment of contemplation, Qiu Yimeng shouted. The Autumn Rain Hall's people instantly moved out, and with a wave of Xiang Tianzhao's hand, the Xiang family's cultivators also swarmed in from all directions, Xiang Ergong taking the lead, brandishing his artifact blade as he bravely charged forward. With his strength, he naturally couldn't compete with an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master, but among the people brought by Yang Zhao and Yang Shun, it was impossible for all of them to have reached the Immortal Ascension Boundary. There were still some who had reached the Yuan Qi boundary. These people were Xiang Tianzhao's targets. Killing one was one less. Seeing Xiang Tianzhao rush up, Xiang Chu couldn't help snorting, a trace of contempt flashing across his eyes. His younger brother's aptitude was indeed good and he was quite popular in the family, but even if he was outstanding, he would never become the patriarch of the Xiang family. Because once a battle broke out, he would be the first to rush forward. Which patriarch would take the lead and disregard his own safety? If this were the case, then all the families in this world would probably have to change patriarchs every few days. A patriarch had to act like a patriarch. A patriarch had to sit behind the scenes, coordinate the overall situation and plan strategies. The one who rushed to the front was a general, not a commander. Staring at the figure of Xiang Tianxiao, Xiang Chu's eyes gradually became gloomy, a cold light flashing across them. You go too. Qiu Yimeng turned to look at the smiling Huastars. Me too. Huastar's eyes widened. What nonsense are you spouting? You're the Hua family's young master. Do you think they'll dare kill you? Qiu Yimeng shouted, grabbing Huastar's clothes and throwing him into the chaotic battlefield. Huastars let out a strange cry as he fell from the sky like a meteor, smashing into the ground and creating a large crater. Qiu Yimeng sneered, no one dares to kill you, at most they'll just injure you. Bitch. Hua Xingchen's legs were numb for a long time before he gradually regained consciousness. Gritting his teeth, he cursed under his breath before raising his arms and shouting, don't call me that, I'll tell you, I am Hua Xingchen, I am the sole heir of the Hua family. If anyone dares to touch me, I'll kill them. Chapter 431. Hua Xingchen shouted loudly. The name of this central capital wolf young Lord Hua, who among the crowd hadn't heard of him. Hearing him say this, both sides couldn't help rolling their eyes, Yang Zhao and Yang Shun's faces turning black. Huastar standing on the battlefield was a complete hindrance. Anyone who tried to attack him had to be careful not to touch him. Even the surging Yuan Qi had to be careful not to touch him. Otherwise, if they really hurt him, with his playful personality, he would definitely settle accounts with them later. At that time, even with Yang Zhao and Yang Shun's protection, those who hurt him would likely not be able to avoid retribution. Of all the people present, only those from the 8 great families were qualified to fight with him and capture him, but the battlefield was so chaotic that Yang Zhao and Yang Shun didn't have the courage to go down personally. Before Huastars could finish speaking, an Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage cultivator was knocked out of the battlefield by Chu Gao Yi and hit his shoulder. The Hua family young lord was enraged on the spot, raising his hand and slapping this man across the face, cursing, fuck, I already said I was Huastars, yet you still don't have eyes. If you hurt me, can you afford to pay for it? This Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage cultivator had been beaten by Chu Gao Yi to the point where he couldn't even breathe. His qi and blood were tumbling, and after being slapped by Huastars in front of everyone, he had nowhere to vent his resentment and anger. Opening his mouth, he coughed up a mouthful of blood and fell limply to the ground. He had actually fainted from anger. Blind fool. Huastars snorted. Yang Zhao and Yang Shun's expressions became more and more ugly. Huastar's actions were too shameless, except for him. None of the young lords from the central capital 8 great families had the face to do such a thing. The Yi family's Yi Xen Ro's charming face showed a wry smile while Qiu Zirua also shook his head. Everyone was ashamed to be associated with such a person. On the other hand, Qiu Yimeng stood nearby with a smile, enjoying the Hua family young lord's shameless performance. Huastars shuttled through the chaotic battlefield like there was no one around him. Anyone who saw him would retreat, making Huastars extremely bored. He stood still and scratched his head. Qiu Yimeng, can I come back now? No one wants to fight me. Who would dare to fight with him now that he had said that? He was the only heir of the Hua family, unlike other families who had at least a few descendants who could carry on the family line. Just stand there. Qiu Yimeng replied with a smile, suddenly realizing that this debauchee young lord could play a significant role. No way. Huastar's face immediately turned bitter. Outside, Yi Xen Ro's beautiful eyes turned. She said softly, "Second young master, let me go and capture him." Although Yi Xen Ro's fame wasn't as good as Qiu Yimeng's, she was still a leader of the younger generation of the central capital. Some people even called her and Qiu Yimeng the 2 delicate flowers of the central capital. On top of that, her own strength wasn't weak. Coupled with a variety of extraordinary artifacts, she was more than capable of exchanging blows with an ordinary Immortal Ascension Boundary 1st Stage master. Yes, capture Huastars. She was rather confident. Others didn't dare to move against the Hua family young lord, but that didn't mean the 8 great families wouldn't. Yang Zhao heard this and shook his head, a dignified expression appearing on his face. You're not his opponent. Exenro was stunned for a moment before smiling wryly. Second young master is looking down on me. Don't just look at my delicate appearance. In fact, I also have some skills. Yang Zhao smiled lightly and said meaningfully, I naturally know your abilities and I'm not looking down on you. It's just that you're looking down on this young Lord Hua. Exenro looked stunned and hesitated. You mean he? Yang Zhao chuckled. Before the Yang family young lords returned to the central capital, there were 3 most famous people in the younger generation, and Hua Stars was ranked 3rd. Do you think he only became famous because of his lust? Exenro, you underestimate the heritage of the Hua family too much. Exenro's expression became serious and she nodded gently. Second young master's words make sense. Perhaps it's because I don't like this person that I underestimated him. While the 2 of them were talking, Xiang Chu, who was standing next to them, quietly glanced towards one of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters below. This Immortal Ascension Boundary Master understood and quietly left the besieging of Chu Gao Yi's group, intentionally or unintentionally moving towards Xiang Tianshao, who was fighting a peak Yuan Qi cultivator. The battlefield was chaotic, so no one paid attention to such a small detail. Even Xiang Tianshao himself didn't notice. A moment later, this Immortal Ascension Boundary Master arrived not far from Xiang Tianshao, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he sent out a burst of invisible spiritual energy. At that moment, the Hua family young lord, for some unknown reason, staggered a few steps to the left. These few critical steps had allowed him to block Xiang Tianzhao's path. His spiritual energy rushed into the Hua family young lord's mind and exploded. Hua Stars' body suddenly released a blue halo. This was the soul-type artifact he carried with him, which played a defensive role. Seeing this blue halo, Hua Stars glanced around suspiciously and happened to meet the eyes of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Master who had attacked Xiang Tianshao. Seemingly reacting, Hua Stars couldn't help grinning. You actually dared to use a soul skill to attack this young master. Your courage isn't small. Fortunately, this young master has a soul-type artifact on him, otherwise, wouldn't you have succeeded? The man didn't expect such a change to occur and was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. Just now, someone had accidentally bumped into Hua Stars and was slapped in public. Now that he had used a soul skill to attack this young master, how could he have a good end? In an instant, cold sweat dripped from his forehead as he quickly waved his hand and explained, Young Lord Hua, I didn't mean to. Hua Stars' expression became fierce as he ground his teeth. You didn't mean to? Could it be you didn't mean to? As he spoke, he threw a slap at Zhang Xian. The young master instinctively raised his hand to block Hua Stars' slap, but after blocking it, he realized that something was wrong, his expression becoming strange and brilliant. Young Lord Hua, Master, can you please not lower yourself to my level? You don't need to say anything. Hua Stars sneered. You're from the Xiang family, right? If this young master doesn't cripple you today, I'll call you Xiang Stars from now on. Stand there and don't move. How could the young master dare to move? He couldn't wait to directly slap himself unconscious. If he hadn't instinctively blocked that slap just now, allowing Hua Stars to vent his anger, he probably wouldn't have ended up like this. His mouth was filled with bitterness, as if he had eaten a bitter pill. Hua Stars turned around and searched the battlefield. He didn't know which corpse he had found a sharp weapon. Waving it a few times, he slowly walked back and stood in front of the young master, his eyes sharp as knives, flashing a cold light as he sized him up. Speak for yourself. Should I chop you to death, or should I chop you to death? Even if this young master's strength was not bad, at this moment, he couldn't help feeling a little scared. Quickly turning his eyes to Xiang Chu, his eyes filled with pleading. Xiang Chu smiled helplessly, although he was the future heir of the Xiang family. The Xiang family was only a first-class force. How could they be qualified to challenge the Hua family? He didn't dare to provoke a rogue like Hua Stars. Seeing Xiang Chu's bitter smile, the young master also knew that he would not be able to escape today, so he grit his teeth and said, Young Lord Hua, you decide for yourself. You have quite the backbone. Huastars was very surprised, seemingly not having expected this young master to not resist at all. Just as he finished speaking, the sharp weapon in his hand flashed a cold light. With a muffled groan, the young master standing in front of Huastars had one of his arms chopped off, blood gushing out like a fountain. "Humph, since you still have some backbone, I'll cripple your arm." The young master was in unbearable pain, but he still didn't dare resist, circulating his yuan qi to slow down the flow of blood, his face pale as he grit his teeth and said, "Many thanks, young Lord Hua, for not killing me." Huastars casually said, "The Xiang family should have one of their arms cut off, and that Nin family should have done the same. If you don't get out of this inheritance war and return home, this young master will cut off all your arms and rename you the One-Arm Xiang family, One-Arm Nin family, Hua." Laughing wildly, Xiang Chu and Nanxing's faces both became extremely pale. Huastars was obviously ridiculing the fact that the four masters from their families had been forced by Yang Kai to cripple their own arms. For both the Xiang and Nan families, this was a great shame. Whether it was Xiang Chu or Nanxing, both of them couldn't help clenching their fists at this moment. This time, they had followed Yang Zhao to find trouble with Yang Kai, but after fighting for so long, Yang Kai still hadn't appeared. On the contrary, their camp had been completely destroyed by Huastar's shameless methods, even cutting off the arms of some of their masters. This was even more embarrassing than slapping their faces. "Second young lord, please uphold justice for us." Xiang Chu grit his teeth and whispered to Yang Zhao, his tone filled with an unforgettable hatred. He was truly enraged. Yang Zhao couldn't help but frown. To be honest, he didn't want to intervene in this battle right now. First of all, Chu Gao Yi was still madly attacking, and the raging energy fluctuations made every corner of the battlefield unsafe. Secondly, Yang Kai still hadn't shown himself, so he didn't know what his little brother, who had been hiding his strength and pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, was planning. However, the Xiang and Nen families were a big help to him. If he didn't do anything at this time, it would only disappoint them. After hesitating for a moment, Yang Zhao nodded, "Good, this young lord will meet him personally." Hearing him agree, both Xiang Chu and Nanxing couldn't help smiling. In the next moment, Yang Zhao and the blood warrior beside him flew into the battlefield. Seeing him personally appear, Huaxing quickly converged his unrestrained expression and became dignified, muttering, "Second young lord is quite refined." Yang Zhao chuckled, "Others don't dare to fight with you, so I'll accompany you." Huaxing smiled bitterly, "Isn't this the end?" Turning back to Qiu Yimeng, he muttered, "Beauty, please find a way to save me, otherwise I'll be captured by second young lord. Although I want Yang Kai to lose, I don't want to be caught, that would be too shameful." Qiu Yimeng's body flickered as she sat down firmly in the armchair, a smile on her face as she said, "It's fine, in any case, it doesn't matter whether you're here or not, you can rest assured." "How can you be so cruel? A woman's heart is the most poisonous, how could young Lord Huan not understand?" Qiu Yimeng snickered like a viper. Huaxing suddenly became speechless. Chapter 432. "Old Hua, be careful." Yang Zhao chuckled, gently reminding him before slowly lifting his foot and stamping it down. Suddenly, several strange lines appeared on the ground, as if there were giant earthworms wriggling beneath them. A terrifying energy burst forth from below, causing Huaxing's expression to change. Earth Demon Dragon Art. A heaven-grade top-rank martial skill, Yang Zhao was able to clearly demonstrate its extraordinariness. Each of these Earth Fiend dragons was condensed from the soul of a fifth-order monster beast and stored in Yang Zhao's body, allowing him to use them flexibly when facing an enemy, often allowing him to catch them off guard and catch them off guard. Yang Zhao now had a total of 7 Earth Demon Dragons at his disposal. With this move, when facing enemies in the Yuanqi realm, he could often defeat them without needing to move. Huaxing's expression became dignified as he quickly retreated, using a mysterious footwork technique. With every step he took, a lotus flower bloomed beneath his feet, blocking and swallowing the Earth Demon Dragons one by one. Moon concealing lotus steps. Also a heaven-grade top-rank martial skill, This was a perfect match for Yang Zhao's Earth Demon Dragon art. After retreating a total of 7 steps, Huixingxing paused in a panic and glanced over at Yang Zhao, wiping the sweat from his forehead as he chuckled. "Second young master, there's no need to be so ruthless, right? In any case, we've gone to the brothel together. Last time at the Spring Breeze Pavilion, you invited me. Don't talk nonsense." Yang Zhao couldn't help rolling his eyes, immediately coldly snorting, "You really are a wolf in sheep's clothing. What is second young master talking about? I don't understand." "Heh, since second young master wants to fight, this young master will gladly oblige." Saying so, Huixingxing simultaneously released 2 different attribute energies. One was wind, the other was thunder. Wind howled, thunder roared, and lightning flashed. The 2 energies merged into one and condensed into a giant fist that shot towards Yang Zhao. Wind and Thunder Qi Fusion Seal. The Hua family's mysterious grade low-rank martial skill. The 2 forces of wind and thunder fused together, greatly increasing their power. Yang Zhao not only didn't show any signs of panic, but instead maintained a calm expression, not even showing any intention of dodging, only a calm smile remained on his face. "Capture him." Just as the wind and thunder combined Qi seal was about to reach him, Yang Zhao suddenly ordered. Huostars's expression changed drastically as he shouted, "Second master, this isn't appropriate, right?" Yang Zhao shrugged his shoulders and chuckled, "Evil people will be dealt with by evil people." While the 2 were talking, the blood warrior beside Yang Zhao had already stepped out. Blood warriors really couldn't take the initiative to attack due to the rules, but now that Huostars had attacked Yang Zhao, he could naturally counterattack. Yang Zhao had obviously intended to use his blood warriors to capture Huostars from the very beginning, which was why he had not evaded his martial skill. Just now, Stars Hua had used shameless methods to mess up the enemy's camp, but now Yang Zhao was using this almost cheating method to deal with him. The blood warrior simply waved his hand and the wind and thunder forces disappeared. Even if this martial skill was mysterious grade low rank, when displayed by Huostars, it couldn't affect the blood warrior in the slightest. After breaking the wind and thunder combined Qi seal, the blood warrior didn't hesitate and grabbed towards Huostars. Grand Duke Hua's expression was one of shock, as if he hadn't expected Yang Zhao to be as shameless as himself. At that moment, 2 people suddenly appeared from nowhere, both of them wearing black tights. One of them shielded Huixingchen as he retreated while the other lightly pushed out a palm towards the blood warrior. The blood warrior's face went cold as his yuan qi surged. With a loud bang, the black-robed man who had been hiding his head and tail was forced back several steps before he was able to stabilize himself. On the other hand, the blood warrior's figure remained steady. With just one move, the difference in strength between the 2 was obvious. The blood warrior was undoubtedly stronger, but the 2 men in black weren't weak either. "There's more help." Yang Zhao's expression sank. He had never expected that there would be so many high school masters hiding in Yang Kai's mansion. Chu Gao Yi alone was enough to pin down most of the people he and Yang Shen had brought. Chu Gao Yi was about to exhaust his yuan qi and spiritual energy, and victory was in sight, but at this critical moment, 2 masters who were only slightly weaker than the blood warrior had appeared. Yang Kai's mansion was equivalent to having 4 immortal ascension boundary 8th stage masters. In addition, there was the Qiu family's Autumn Rain Hall, the Xiang family's group, and the rogue Huostars. On the other hand, although he and Yang Shen's strength wasn't inferior to the other parties, in fact they completely surpassed them, the 2 blood warriors couldn't take the initiative to attack, so there was no hope for them to take this place. Where did his 9th brother get so many helpers? Yang Zhao's eyes went red with envy. Fuck. Huostars stared dumbfoundedly at the 2 masked men in black, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Yang Zhao didn't know who these 2 people were, but he was well aware. These 2 had followed him for so many years that even if Huixingchen was blind, he would still be able to recognize them. These 2 fellows, who seemed to be hiding their heads and tails, were clearly his protectors. For a moment, both Yang Zhao and Huostars were stunned. Qiu Yimeng sat in her armchair and laughed happily, as if she had won a big prize. Yang Shen's face was as black as charcoal. The two sides stared at each other for a while before Yang Zhao grit his teeth and shouted, "Retreat!" If there was no hope of taking over Yang Kai's mansion tonight, what was the point of staying? Yang Zhao was also a decisive person. With a single order, the cultivator who had been besieging Chu Gao Yi jumped out of the battle. Chu Gao Yi, who was covered in blood, gasped for breath, but didn't pursue, simply standing in place and watching the enemy retreat. Xiang Tianzhao's cultivator and the Autumn Rain Hall's people also quickly separated from the enemy. Sixth young master, are we just going to give up like this? Qiu Zirua asked somewhat unwillingly. He couldn't wait to defeat Yang Kai and prove his ability, so when he heard Yang Zhao's order to retreat, he was dumbfounded. What else can we do? Yang Shun had nowhere to vent his anger, so he simply replied. In tonight's battle, he had lost far more people than Yang Zhao, so his mood was naturally not very good. Saying so, Yang Shun sighed and was about to leave with Yang Zhao when a figure suddenly flew in from outside. A clear voice called out, "If we leave like this, ninth brother will feel a little apologetic, so I'll give second brother and sixth brother a small gift to bring back." As he spoke, an overwhelming sword wave descended from the sky. 9 Star Sword School's mysterious grade martial skill, 10,000 swords returned to 1. Amidst the sword light, streaks of purple light burst forth as a mysterious and icy soul skill erupted. Tiger roars and ox roars rang out as beast soul skills burst forth. Thousands of sharp blood-red petals fell from the sky like snowflakes, but each one of them was a deadly weapon. These numerous attacks were launched almost simultaneously, enveloping all of the enemies. In an instant, the atmosphere that had just calmed down once again became tense and murderous. "Young master, be careful!" Cries of alarm rang out. The two blood warriors took the lead to protect Yang Zhao and Yang Shun while the Xiang family, Nen family, Qiu family, and Yi family's high rankers all rushed to their young master and young lady's sides, activating all kinds of martial skills and artifacts to ensure the safety of their young masters and young ladies. The energy between the heavens and earth suddenly became chaotic as a violent yuan qi raged. After a while, the earth-shattering commotion gradually subsided. Of the people who had come to attack Yang Kai's mansion, 6 or 7 had fallen while the remaining ones wore ugly expressions. Yang Zhao's cold eyes turned towards the star field. Midair, Yang Kai stood with his sword in hand, a smile on his face as he calmly said, "Second brother, sixth brother, good evening." Ninth brother went out and just returned, so I apologize for my lack of hospitality. Between us brothers, I'm sure you won't mind. Yang Zhao's face twitched slightly while Yang Shun screamed, "Ninth brother, you really went out." Before, when Hua Stars and Qiu Yimeng said that Yang Kai wasn't at home, he and Yang Zhao didn't believe them, thinking that Yang Kai was afraid of being captured and had gone into hiding, but now that they saw him fly back, they had no choice but to believe it. Yang Kai nodded. "The night was long, so I went to third brother's house for a bit. I didn't expect you would come tonight. If I had known, I would have stayed to entertain you." Third brother's house. Yang Zhao's eyes narrowed, suddenly realizing his ninth brother's boldness and couldn't help admiring him. Taking a deep breath, Yang Zhao asked, "How is third brother's situation?" Third brother was defeated. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Fifth brother and seventh brother jointly attacked, but third brother couldn't hold on. It's normal that he couldn't hold on, but little brother Kai, you've greatly exceeded second brother's expectations. Quietly, you've gathered so many people, second brother admires you. Second brother is too polite. Yang Kai smiled lightly. So, who took third brother's flag and people? Listening to Yang Zhao's question, Yang Shun couldn't help looking over with interest. The news will come out tomorrow. Yang Kai smiled and didn't say anything. Yang Zhao didn't ask again, just nodding lightly and chuckling. Since that's the case, second brother will take his leave. Little brother Kai, the future is long. Next time, second brother will be fully prepared. I hope you won't let me down. I'll try to satisfy you. Let's go. Yang Zhao shouted, leading his people and quickly retreating. Before Xiang Chu and Nanxing left, they couldn't help glancing over at Yang Kai with dread. Last time in Taifang Mountain, Yang Kai had left a deep impression on them. Even though they had been clamoring for revenge, seeing Yang Kai in person at this moment, they couldn't help feeling apprehensive. With Yang Zhao gone, Yang Shen naturally wasn't willing to stay any longer. His subordinates took the corpses of their companions and quickly disappeared into the night. The first night of the Inheritance War came to an end. In the Seal Temple, the 8 above Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, the Supreme Elders from the various great families, all slowly opened their eyes, gradually withdrawing their divine senses, their turbid eyes filled with amazement. When one's strength reached their level, when one reached their age, it was difficult for anything in this world to cause them any kind of emotional fluctuation. But tonight, someone had done just that. Chapter 433. After a moment of silence, a white-haired old man asked in an extremely weak voice, "That northwest corner, which one of the Yang family's children's mansions is it?" Someone hesitated for a moment before replying, "It seems to be the youngest one." Everyone nodded gently, praising. Since ancient times, heroes have always come from the young. The Yang family's grand elder Yang Liting couldn't help laughing, his face filled with pride. Even though he no longer pursued anything in this world and his heart was as calm as still water, after spying on Yang Kai's performance tonight, he couldn't help feeling somewhat relieved, thinking that the Yang family had finally found a worthy successor. The Qiu family's grand elder, Qiu Daoren, nodded. His courage is great and his personal strength is impeccable, but in the Inheritance War, these 2 points alone are not enough to win. I just wonder if he has more helpers. Pay more attention to his performance. This time's Inheritance War seems to be much more exciting than in previous years. Everyone nodded, agreeing with this point of view. The 8 above Immortal Ascension Boundary Grand Elders were all ancestors of their respective families. Before nightfall, they had already sent out their divine senses to every corner of War City, monitoring the surrounding movements. Yang Kai's actions naturally couldn't escape their perception. However, there was one thing these 8 people couldn't understand. What method did he use to suddenly erupt with such a tyrannical and strange spiritual energy? With his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to possess a divine sense, so the only explanation was that this youngest Yang family young lord had a powerful soul-type artifact on him. This artifact was capable of releasing divine sense pressure, causing others to have illusions. Although all 8 of them showed interest in Yang Kai, that was the extent of it. These 8 old men would not participate in the Inheritance War, nor would they interfere with it. If Yang Kai won, they would be happy to see it. If Yang Kai lost, they didn't care, including Yang Liting. They all shared the same thought. Almost immediately after the 8 old men withdrew their ocean-like divine senses, Yang Kai involuntarily let out a sigh of relief, the faint vigilance that had been hanging on his face finally converging. Glancing towards the Seal Temple, Yang Kai glanced over. He could sense that someone was watching him, and there was more than one person. However, those people's divine senses were so powerful that he was powerless to hide his whereabouts. Thinking of the rumors, Yang Kai quickly understood who was monitoring him. He had to break through to the Immortal Ascension boundary as soon as possible. With the protection of his knowledge sea and the assistance of the soul-warming lotus, Yang Kai believed he could conceal himself from the prying eyes of these 8 people. The feeling of being watched was very unpleasant, even though he knew that they wouldn't do anything. Yang Kai would not allow this to continue. He had too many secrets. Yang Kai. Qiu Yimeng was overjoyed as she stood up from her chair and called out. Glancing down, Yang Kai ordered, "Get someone to clean up the corpses and blood here." The corpses on the ground all belonged to their own people. The enemy's corpses had already been taken away by them. The Qiu family's autumn rain hall had lost 6 people, and Xiang Tianshao had also lost 7 of his men. 13 corpses were laid out in front of the central hall, and the smell of blood filled the air. After he finished speaking, his figure flickered, landing in front of Chu Gao Yi. In this battle, Chu Gao Yi had single-handedly resisted the attacks of nearly 10 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, several of whom were Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th or 8th Stage Masters. If he hadn't been so fierce, it would have been difficult to predict what would have happened tonight. But now, Chu Gao Yi's body, which had just recovered, had suffered another heavy blow. His whole body was covered in blood, some from his enemies, some from himself, and some from his own. Subordinate didn't ask little Lord to do this. Chu Gao Yi grit his teeth and said, "You've done well." Yang Kai nodded lightly. Receiving this praise, Chu Gao Yi grinned and his burly body began to sway. In the darkness, a figure appeared like a ghost. It was Ying Jiao who appeared and supported Chu Gao Yi, not letting him fall. "Send him back to rest." Yang Kai ordered Ying Jiao. "Yes." Ying Jiao nodded, supporting Chu Gao Yi as they slowly disappeared. Yang Kai then turned to look at the two masked men in black, chuckling lightly, "Many thanks for your hard work." The two men didn't say a word, simply cupping their fists to Yang Kai before leaving like a whirlwind. Hua Xingchen had been staring at them all this time, and even now, his pair of eyes were like locusts gnawing at their backs, his mouth letting out a sinister grin as he sneered. After they left, Hua Xing turned to look at Yang Kai with a speechless expression, gritting his teeth as he muttered, "You're really something. You even schemed against father here." Yang Kai smiled and gently shook his head. "There's no need for them, this place is safe tonight. At most, you'll be taken away." "Good, good, good, this young master won't argue with you." Hua Xingchen also knew that Yang Kai was telling the truth. With Ying Jiao in his peak state hiding nearby, whether it was Yang Zhao or Yang Shen, neither of them dared to act rashly. If the two of them could cooperate sincerely and use one of their blood warriors to entangle Ying Jiao while the other went to retrieve the flag, there was a chance they could succeed. But how could they sincerely cooperate? Each of them were rivals. If there was any benefit, then there was no benefit to be gained. Who would be willing to work for another's wedding dress? Yang Kai had obviously considered this point, so he felt relieved and boldly ran out on his own. The people from the Autumn Rain Hall and Xiang Tianshao were collecting the corpses when Yang Kai swept his eyes around and declared, "This inheritance war is something you all voluntarily participated in. No matter how many of you die, you should be mentally prepared." Hearing this, the people from the Autumn Rain Hall and Xiang family couldn't help frowning, suddenly feeling that this Yang Kai wasn't a good person. Others had come to help him win the inheritance war and had even died here, yet he didn't even say a single word of praise. At the very least, he should have comforted them. So what if you're a young lord of the Yang family? Those who died here weren't animals, they were human lives. His expression becoming cold, Yang Kai suddenly changed the topic and continued, "I will remember all those who died here. In the future, I will pay you several times the compensation for your losses. So live and wait." Qiu Yimeng's expression suddenly brightened as she smiled lightly. These words were enough for her. Although the time she had spent with Yang Kai wasn't long, it wasn't short either, and she had never heard him promise anything. A man who didn't always keep his promises was definitely a man who kept his word. For a moment, Qiu Yimeng was full of expectations for the future. She still remembered that Kai Yang had once said that what he needed were allies who would stand firmly by his side when he was in the midst of his most difficult times. He didn't need allies who wanted to get involved with him for their own benefits. But now, all of the people here had taken the initiative to come to his side when he was at his weakest. No matter what the reason was, they had obviously won his approval. In the inheritance war, the earlier you invested your capital, the greater the return you would receive. If you wanted to make friends with someone, you couldn't do so while they were still weak. Once they were strong, there would be no more opportunities. Qiu Yimeng suddenly felt a little lucky that she had made the right choice. This man was really a man who could bring about miracles. After this battle, the mansion was seriously damaged. After the Autumn Rain Hall and the Xiang family people finished collecting the corpses, they immediately threw themselves into the repair work, not even having time to rest. Qiu Yimeng was like a real housekeeper, directing what little strength she had to fill in the holes in Yang Kai's mansion as much as possible. At some point, the Hua family young lord had disappeared, and no one knew where he had gone. Outside War City, Hua Xingchen swaggered out, walking straight for 10 kilometers before slowly coming to a stop and shouting, "Come out, what are you still hiding for?" The next moment, two old men at the Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage walked out of the darkness and came up to Hua Xing, respectfully calling out, "Young master." Hua Xing stared at the two old men with a complicated look on his face, only asking after a long time, "Did father ask you to protect me in secret?" One of the old men nodded. "Yes, old master was afraid that something would happen to you tonight, so he asked us to watch over you in secret." Hua Xing was the only son of the Hua family. Although Hua Zheng hated his son for failing to live up to his expectations and had opposed his choice of Yang Kai as an ally during the day, how could he rest assured that his son would remain in such a dangerous place? Naturally, he had arranged everything so he could feel at ease. "Father asked you to protect me in secret." Hua Xing grit his teeth. "Don't you understand what that means? Why did you run out here? That Yang Zhao's blood warriors don't have the guts to kill me, at most they'll capture me, but this young master won't lose a single hair. And the two of you actually covered your faces, both of you hiding your faces, making a fool of yourself. This young master will die from anger because of you. Fortunately, you hid your actions well and only exchanged a single blow with the blood warriors, so those people probably couldn't see your origins. Otherwise, wouldn't my Hua family have lost a great deal of face this time?" Of the masters sent by the central capital's 8 great families to participate in the inheritance war, except for the Yang family blood warriors, the strongest was no more than an Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Master. The Hua family's 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Masters had actually fought. If news of this spread out, they would definitely become a laughingstock. The two old men glanced at each other, both of them wearing awkward expressions, the one who spoke first saying, "We also have our own difficulties." "Difficulties? What kind of difficulties? Let's hear it." Hua Xing squinted at the two old men. The two old fellows immediately looked embarrassed. Stuttering, they recounted what had happened during the day. As Hua Xing listened, his expression became uglier and uglier, waiting for them to finish before chuckling. "2 pots of wine were enough to buy you? I think you should just go to the Chiu family or the Yang family. My Hua family probably doesn't have that kind of fine wine for you to enjoy." "Young master, please don't be angry." The two old men panicked and quickly said, "The key is that the Chiu family's first young lady personally sent us 2 pots of wine. We really couldn't refuse." Hua Xing curled his lips and glared at them for a moment before gritting his teeth and cursing. "This pair of adulterers is really cunning to the extreme. It's all your fault. You two idiots didn't hide well and let others discover your whereabouts." Chapter 434. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Masters from the Hua family both wore awkward expressions, wanting to explain to their young master that it wasn't their fault for not hiding properly, but they simply couldn't bring themselves to do so. Even now, they still didn't understand how they were exposed. This matter was full of mysteries. This time, this young master is finished. He's really going to die without a burial. There's no way to reverse the situation. Hua Stars sighed and shook his head. What happened? The two masters were shocked. They had followed Hua Stars for so many years but had never heard him speak such serious words. At first, they thought Hua Stars had some kind of abnormality with his body, so how could they not worry? "Young master, if I were to run 10 laps around War City naked, wouldn't you say I'd die?" Hua Stars said with a sullen expression. The expressions of the two experts suddenly became extremely strange. They secretly thought that although their young master was good at eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling, he had never been raised to have such an indecent hobby since he was young. Glancing at each other, the two masters seemed to be imagining a scene of Hua Stars running around War City naked, causing all the women in War City to scream. For some reason, both of them couldn't help laughing. Quickly restraining their expressions, one of them asked, "Young master, what happened? How could you do that? Did someone force you?" "No one forced me. It's just that this young master made a bet with that bastard Yang Kai on impulse during the day." Thinking back to the day's bet, Stars Hua gritted his teeth angrily. That bastard Yang Kai clearly had a plan in mind. Thinking that he wouldn't be able to resist tonight, he had actually been attracted by a golden feather eagle and excitedly agreed to his bet. At that time, he had thought that this fool was a bit whimsical, but now it seemed that the fool wasn't Yang Kai, but himself. After briefly explaining the bet during the day, the two masters from the Hua family suddenly became speechless. They both knew their young master's character. Hua Xingchen's reputation in the outside world was quite bad. He was known for being unrestrained and unrestrained, but when such a person made a promise, he would absolutely abide by it. In other words, this person's gambling character was quite good. He was indeed a rogue. However, he had never regretted gambling with others. From the beginning, he didn't have enough silver. Directly mortgaging the profound light gang to Yang Kai could be seen from this point. He was a very conceited person who didn't like owing people things, including bets and favors. Since he had made a bet, now he had lost. Now he would really be forced to run 10 laps around War City. The two powerhouses of the Hua family could almost predict that when this news reached the Hua family, old Master Hua Zheng would be so angry that he would bleed from all 7 orifices and die. Young Masters, let's hear it, Hua stars Hua. Without a care for his image, he sat down on a large rock and cast a sidelong glance at the two men. Young's young master, S's young master. Young master, I don't think that young Lord Yang Kai really wants you to run 10 laps around War City naked. Young master, you are an ally of his, so he should give you some face. You might as well explain it to him directly. He will probably do you a favor and turn the big problem into a small one, and the small problem into nothing. Nonsense. Hua snorted. Although this young master hasn't spent much time with him, I'm quite clear about his temperament. This bastard is ruthless, even more difficult to deal with than this young master. If I don't do something, he'll definitely force me to run 10 laps. Perhaps he's already looking for me right now. As he spoke, he ground his teeth. Damn, this bastard's personal strength is extraordinary. If not for that, this young master would have directly beaten him to vent his anger. Thinking back to the scene of that night and thinking back to how he had defeated Xiang Tianshao in a single move, Hua couldn't help feeling a little resentful. Both of them were young lords from the 8 great families, so how could he be so strong? What does young master want to do? One of them heard Hua's words and couldn't help asking. I don't know, that's why I'm asking you. Hua acted like a hands-off boss. The man pondered for a moment before slowly saying, in any case, young master has already declared himself an ally of young Lord Yang Kai. Although the old master opposes it, it's useless. What's more, Yang Kai's house seems to be lacking both manpower and supplies. Our Hua family has a lot of financial resources, it's better to ask the old master for some manpower and supplies. This way, I'm afraid young Lord Yang Kai won't pursue the matter of your bet. Hearing this, Hua Xingchen grinned meaningfully and pointed to the master. You're the one who said that. This young master didn't say anything. When we get home, if my father asks, you'll report it truthfully. The master couldn't help being stunned and immediately smiled bitterly, understanding that Hua had long since planned this and was just trying to induce him to speak up. In this way, if Hua Zheng asked, he would have a reason to explain. Hua Zheng was annoyed with his son's reckless actions and didn't give him any power to mobilize, but if these two masters acted as lobbyists, perhaps he could really mobilize manpower and supplies from the Hua family. Good, let's go home. We need to finish this matter before the sun comes out, lest that bastard say this young master goes back on his word and doesn't keep his word. Hua crossed his arms behind his back and swaggered back towards the central capital, the two Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Masters following closely behind him. From an angle where no one could see, Hua's expression became dignified and serious, no longer showing any of his previous arrogance. In tonight's battle, everyone had only been amazed by the powerful defensive capabilities of the two blood warriors, but they had also been distracted by their own shameless actions. It seemed that no one had time to think about how the two blood warriors had managed to restore themselves to their peak in just a single day. Hua admitted that he had underestimated Yang Kai. Before nightfall, he really thought that Yang Kai would definitely lose tonight. Even if he guessed that he had some kind of trump card up his sleeve, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. However, he really hadn't expected that Yang Kai would be able to easily defend his mansion and even run around on his own. This young family little lord was really interesting. Not only him, but all the other young lords of the Yang family were also not easy to provoke. His original intention was just to play around in this inheritance war to pass the time, but now Starzhua was faintly looking forward to seeing what the final outcome of this inheritance war would be. He wanted to see whether Yang Kai would win or lose. With a deep look in his eyes, Starzhua considered many things on his way home. On the first night of the inheritance war, there were a total of 2 battles, one at the 3rd brother Yang Tai's house and the other at the 9th brother Yang Kai's house. The final outcome of these 2 battles had greatly shocked the crowd. Similarly, in both of these battles, there was a single person who was entangled in them, Yang Kai. In the battle at the 3rd brother Yang Tai's house, at the last moment, both the flag and the person had been snatched away by Yang Kai, but his own house, without him guarding it, had actually been perfectly defended. This was simply incredible. No one who heard these 2 pieces of news was willing to believe it, and after many inquiries, they were able to confirm that the news was true. At the same time, another bombshell was thrown out. This Yang Kai not only had Starzhua as an ally, but even the Qiu family's Qiu Yimeng had temporarily left her family and become his helper. Starzhua was a useless young lord, so it was understandable that he didn't have a good eye for talent, but why was Qiu Yimeng willing to temporarily leave her family to help him? The Qiu family's first young lady's name was extremely resounding, and she had always been known for her sharp eyes, so Qiu Yimeng's actions made many people think. All of a sudden, Yang Kai had gone from being completely ignored to a young family young lord with the support of 2 young lords and young ladies from the 8 great families. Not only did this shock the entire war city, but even the entire central capital began to spread Yang Kai's name. Yang Kai's fame was currently unparalleled. The moon was hidden, and the sun was rising. In the courtyard, Yang Kai was practicing his unyielding golden skeleton secret art when Qiu Yimeng walked over with a tired face. She had barely slept all night, and after cleaning up the aftermath of yesterday's battle, she had been busy until now. Standing 10 meters away from him, Qiu Yimeng's beautiful eyes revealed a suspicious look. She had seen Yang Kai use this set of martial arts before, so she was naturally familiar with it now. However, no matter how she looked at it, she couldn't see what was so profound about this set of martial arts. It seemed like she could also use it easily. She didn't know why Yang Kai was so fond of this set of martial arts, and why he always chose to use it at sunrise. "What's the matter?" Yang Kai asked softly. "Your cousin is here." Qiu Yimeng rubbed her forehead and replied, "That fat man? And that fat man? Let him find a place to live, I'll go find him later." Qiu Yimeng nodded, walking a few steps before turning back and saying, "I forgot to tell you, today you'd better set aside some time." "What for?" "There will probably be a lot of people coming to join you." "I don't know any of them." Yang Kai frowned, still performing his martial arts unhurriedly. Today, there were people coming to seek refuge. It must be because the news of last night had spread out. Although during the day yesterday, many forces had already chosen allies at the south gate of the central capital, but even more forces were secretly observing, waiting to see the performance of the various young lords last night before making a decision. Yang Kai's performance last night was too eye-catching, so it wasn't surprising that there would be people coming to join him. Listening to Yang Kai's answer, Qiu Yimeng didn't refute it, instead gently nodding, "Good, if people we don't know come, I'm afraid they're only here for benefits." She thoroughly understood Yang Kai's character. He was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Now that the relationship between them had eased a bit, how could Qiu Yimeng oppose him and make him hate her? Nodding, she went back to her work. Half an hour later, Yang Kai finished his work, his bones crackling with joy. The unyielding golden skeleton body secret art, he still hadn't been able to fully display. This seemingly ordinary set of martial arts actually contained the essence of the martial Tao. The more he used it, the greater the pressure he would have to bear. With Yang Kai's current cultivation, he could only display half of it at most. He estimated that he would need to reach the above immortal ascension boundary at least to be able to fully display the unyielding golden skeleton body secret art. Chapter 435. In a side hall of Yang Kai's mansion, Dong Qinghan was sipping tea, Recalling some of the things the Wind and Cloud brothers had told him after they returned last night, the shock in his heart still not completely subsiding. Although he was not present at the time, through the description of the Wind and Cloud brothers, Dong Qinghan still realized how terrifying Yang Kai was. His cousin's growth these past few years was like a divine blessing. Dong Qinghan couldn't help feeling a little envious. After waiting for a while, Yang Kai came out sweating profusely. Dong Qinghan didn't blame him for putting on airs. After all, he had beaten him many times when he was a child. When Dong Qinghan saw Yang Kai, he was closer than a real brother, so naturally he didn't think too much about it. "You little brat." Dong Qinghan didn't get up, just stared at Yang Kai playfully. "You've got some skill. You didn't waste me lending the Wind and Cloud brothers to you for half a night." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. "If I don't have a diamond, I won't take on porcelain work. Last night I worked hard for the two seniors." Towards Feng Yun and Feng Yun, Kai Yang also respected them, not only because they were his cousin's guardians, but also because before High Heaven Pavilion's disaster, Feng Yun had traveled thousands of miles alone to deliver a message, giving the hundreds of people from High Heaven Pavilion some time to evacuate ahead of time. If the Wind Guard hadn't arrived in time, High Heaven Pavilion may have suffered some losses. If that had happened, his relationship with Qiu Yimeng would have been irreconcilable. The Wind Guard smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Old Yun and I just went to take a look around. We didn't contribute much. The one with real skill is young Lord Kai." The Cloud Guard also nodded silently. When the two old men looked at Yang Kai again, they couldn't help admiring him. There was no other young man who could amaze them like this. Their own young lord was considered good among the younger generation, but compared to this young master, he was still far from enough. Even Feng Yun didn't know to what extent a person like Yang Kai could grow. "This time, I brought 30 people with me to help you. In addition to the Wind and Cloud brothers, there are 5 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, and the rest are all Yuan Qi cultivators, the lowest of which is Yuan Qi 5th stage." Dong Qinghan's expression changed. "In addition, my father asked me to bring some supplies, most of which are finished pills and some raw materials. There are a few. There are quite a few of them." Yang Kai nodded silently and said with a smile, "Thank you, uncle." The Dong family was Dong Suju's maternal family, and Yang Kai was Dong Suju's son. As a first-class force, the Dong family was able to send so many Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. Moreover, he even had the materials to bring along with him, which was already very good. After all, before this, Yang Kai's chances of winning the inheritance war were almost nil. There was no hope at all. These people from the Dong clan must have been mentally prepared to sacrifice all of them. The loss of this group of people, in particular, the loss of a Heaven's Gate realm master, was a heavy blow to the Dong family. Yang Kai knew what the Dong family had done for him. "I've already handed over everything to your steward." Dong Qinghan smiled, his slightly obese face filled with a wretched expression. "You mean Qiu Yimeng?" Yang Kai was stunned. Who else could it be? "Little brat, not only are you proud on the battlefield, but you're also proud of your love life. You're really something," Dong Qinghan said enviously. "Moreover, I heard from my little sister that there seems to be a pure and beautiful woman who misses you day and night." Dong Qinghan's words were filled with envy. Even though he was the young lord of a first-class family, it was difficult for him to compare to Yang Kai's luck. Yang Kai's brow twitched, and just as he was about to ask, Qiu Yimeng walked in from the outside and smiled. "What are you two brothers talking about? Why do I seem to hear you speak ill of me?" "I wouldn't dare." Dong Qinghan quickly got up from his chair. In front of Yang Kai, he could act as he pleased. After all, they were cousins, and in terms of closeness, he was closer than any of Yang Kai's cousins. But in front of Qiu Yimeng, Dong Qinghan didn't dare act rudely. Yang Kai chuckled, but before he could answer, his eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at the woman next to Qiu Yimeng, his brow furrowing slightly. This was a rare beauty. Her beautiful black hair flowed down like a waterfall, her arched eyebrows, a pair of starry eyes that could captivate souls, a delicate nose, pink cheeks that were slightly flushed, and 2 cherry lips that were dripping with water. Her oval face was as beautiful as a flower, and her skin was as white as snow. Her figure was absolutely beautiful, and she was charming and affectionate, pleasing to the eye. This beauty's figure, appearance, and temperament were all comparable to Qiu Yimeng's. However, if someone who didn't know her saw her for the first time, they would definitely not be attracted by her beautiful face, but rather by her pair of full breasts. This pair of jade peaks was a rare sight, almost bursting out of her clothes, trembling with elasticity. Next was her waist, which was as soft as a water snake, as if it had no bones, and her round buttocks seemed to ripple as she walked. Yang Kai's eyes couldn't help but stare at this pair of soft breasts for a while. Qiu Yimeng saw this and lightly snorted, straightening her back. Sniffing his nose, Yang Kai's eyes shifted upwards, just in time to meet the woman's pair of watery eyes. There seemed to be a mix of joy, regret, excitement, embarrassment, and a variety of other emotions. The corners of Yang Kai's mouth rose slightly, and the woman also pursed her lips into a smile. Yang Kai, do you remember this girl? Dong Qinghan asked with a smile. Naturally I remember, Yang Kai nodded, turning to the woman and saying, Senior Sister Lan, long time no see. Since we last met, it's been 3 or 4 years. The woman converged the complex look in her eyes and calmly replied. This woman was none other than Lan Chudai from High Heaven Pavilion. Yang Kai had bought 2 Yang attribute spirit grass seeds from her, and later, when they entered the Heaven's Cave inheritance, he had teamed up with her. However, inside the Heaven's Cave inheritance, Yang Kai and this senior sister had some disagreements, so they parted ways. Later, when the first-class forces heard that the Heaven's Cave inheritance had appeared near High Heaven Pavilion, many of their disciples had obtained benefits from it, so they tried to poach her. At that time, Lan Chudai was poached by Dong Qinghan into the Dong family. She had also obtained a lot of benefits from the Heaven's Cave inheritance. At that time, Lan Chudai was only at the Qi transformation boundary 7th stage, but now she had reached the Yuan Qi boundary 6th stage. Yang Kai's impression of this senior sister was neither good nor bad, he only felt that she was a bit of a snobbish person who always fought for every opportunity. After such a long time, Yang Kai no longer cared about the little entanglements of the past. Lan Chudai was alone in High Heaven Pavilion, and she was also a woman, so it was understandable for her to be snobbish. Especially since she was beautiful and had the capital to back it up. If such a woman did not find ways to improve her strength and become a powerhouse, what awaited her would only be reduced to a man's plaything. Everyone had their own difficulties. Yang Kai could understand. Senior sister is amazing, your strength has risen so quickly. Thinking quickly, Yang Kai couldn't help but praise. How can I compare to junior brother? Lan Chudai smiled. Senior sister never thought that I would have a junior brother from the central capital's Yang family. If I had known earlier, senior sister would not have accepted the money for those 2 seeds. Her words were polite and even somewhat restrained. It seemed that after this meeting, along with the change in status of Yang Kai, Lan Chudai was slightly uncomfortable. Qiu Yimeng observed from the sidelines and couldn't help feeling that the relationship between this pair of senior sister and junior brother was a bit too dull, without the slightest hint of joy. Although she didn't know the reason for this, she was still able to infer some information. Dong Qinghan smiled and interjected, Yang Kai, Sister Lan is now the leader of our Dong family's younger generation. Many people in the Dong family worship her. Really? Yang Kai was a little surprised. Her strength has risen rapidly, and she's also very beautiful. I don't know how many people like her. Dong Qinghan said, intentionally or unintentionally. Lan Chudai's cheeks couldn't help but blush as she glared at Dong Qinghan. Young Master Dong, don't speak nonsense. As she spoke, she secretly observed Yang Kai's reaction and found that he was indifferent, so she couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Good. Qiu Yimeng clapped her hands, interrupting their meaningless conversation. Let's postpone reminiscing for the time being. Now that everyone is here, Yang Kai, tell us about your plans for the next few days. What plans? Yang Kai looked at Qiu Yimeng in amazement. The Qiu family's first young lady blinked twice. You are the master of this mansion, and you won a great victory last night. Don't you have any plans for the next few days? What plans do you have in mind? Yang Kai smiled. You can attack your eighth brother Yang Quan. As far as I know, although Yang Quan has an immortal ascension boundary 8th stage blood warrior as his retainer, there is only one. With our current strength, we can easily deal with him. As long as you attack him, you can let Chu Gao Yi or Ing Jiao entangle that blood warrior. At that time, it will be easy to capture him and seize his flag. Do you think my brothers are vegetarians? Yang Kai couldn't help laughing. Would they just watch me attack my eighth brother and remain indifferent? Of course they aren't vegetarians. Sitting on top of a mountain to watch the tigers fight and then reap the benefits of the fisherman's quarrel, especially since you are the first one to do so. However, last night, except for your eldest brother Yang Wei, who didn't lose any of his strength, everyone else has lost some of their strength. In the next few days, they will only be recruiting and expanding their own forces. How could they spare any energy to deal with you? Even if they did, they would only be harassing you. If it were up to me, we should go out tonight and eliminate your eighth brother. Your ambition isn't small. Yang Kai looked at her with a smile. I admit what you said makes sense, but I won't attack my eighth brother. But Qiu Yimeng asked suspiciously, if we miss these few days, we may not have such a good opportunity in the future. Dong Qinghan also nodded seriously. Young Lady Qiu is right, I also think we should go out tonight. He hadn't been able to participate in last night's battle, so naturally he couldn't wait to stir up some trouble. Haven't you figured out the rules of the inheritance war yet? If you can defeat my eighth brother, then you will have a chance to grasp his strength. With such a good opportunity, why hesitate? Qiu Yimeng couldn't understand. If she were in Yang Kai's shoes, there was no need to think too much. Tonight, she would strike while the iron was hot and turn the world upside down, making her name even more resounding. So when she heard Yang Kai refuse her proposal, she was a little confused. Aris, welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.